It's an understatement to say this is a privilege to share anything with you. To God be the glory for any and all things that He does through people like us. I was greeting people outside on the very first Sunday at St. Mark in Leesburg when Joanne walked up, a small, thin, frail woman who looked like she must have had a severe stroke. I shook her hand and I said, "Are you a member?" She said, "I haven't been in a church for over 40 years. I said, "This is great, because I don't even know if I'm coming back next week." And I said, "Why are you here?" She said, "My sister's visiting from out of town, and she said she'd like to go to church. You're the closest one." It's okay with me. Her sister and brother-in-law walked up, and I said, "Good morning." In the conversation, I asked if she was Lutheran. She said, "I'm Methodist, but I don't care where I go." And I asked her husband, "How about you?" He said, "I'm nothing." I said, "You guys aren't going to believe this. This is my very first Sunday, and this morning I prayed, 'Lord, please bring me a Methodist and a nothing.'" And here you are. After church, I asked Joanne, "What do you think? Should we come back?" She said, "I think you should, but I'm not going to. I don't have the courage to come by myself." I said, "I'll be waiting outside for you, Joanne. I've got courage for both of us. I'll walk you in." She came. On a home visit, Joanne shared that she did not believe there is a heaven. When this life ends, everything else ends with it. And I also learned she had not had a stroke. Many years earlier, she was working in her office in New York late at night so that she could pick up her husband from the airport. He'd been overseas on business. Someone broke in and brutally assaulted her and left her for dead. They found her crumpled up under her desk the next morning and thought she was. She was in recovery for more than 3 years. Now, she also had leukemia. Her husband, Richard, did not believe there was a God. If there was, where was he when Joanne was attacked? And where was he when their 1-year-old grandson had a brain tumor? And I can tell you right now, he said, God did not write that Bible. Men wrote that. But I'm not going to think less of you if you want to believe he did. I said, I can't convince you that heaven is real. I can't convince you that God is God, but God can. This might sound crazy, but I'm going to ask you to please come and take a Bible information class that I'm starting. No obligations. You can walk away, but at least I'll know that I did everything I could. He said, "Thanks, Dave. We'll get back with you." I said, "Okay." And I sat and I almost got up to leave. And I said, "You know what? I don't think I lose anything if I make you mad. But I don't think I just walked away from the coolest job in the world and took my family away from all their friends and family, sat in a stuffy classroom for 8 years to sit here in your living room and today become timid. What do you have to lose?" I'm terrified that if I walk out, your wife, who I think you love, dies without peace. I also think that you love her enough to where she might keep looking for something after I leave, because I think the Lord might have started something. And I'm terrified that somebody else would come along and schmooze you into a church that's not going to be what you need. Please come. At the end of it, walk away. I'll never bother you again. They came. After class one day, Joanne said, "I can't come. I can't hardly walk." I said, "I'll finish at your house." And one day walking into their house, Joanne was waiting for me, and she said, "Pastor, I get it." Just tears, but this huge smile. "I know heaven is for real, and I'm going to be there because Jesus died to take away my sins." I said, "You don't believe that for a minute?" She said, "Yes, I do, damn it." He grabbed a hold of my arms. She said, "Listen to me. I'm going to heaven because Jesus is my Savior. I just called all my children this morning and told them they need to too, because I want to see them there. And I told them I'm never taking God's name in vain again. From now on, I'm going to say," and then she said, "the world's naughtiest word." I took her in my arms and I said, "Joanne, I love you. We'll get to that in lesson 17. I looked over at Dick sitting in his chair in a corner, and I gave him the look. And he just shook his head, and I said, "No." He said, "Yeah, Dave, I do too." I said, "You both are full of it. We're still finishing class." A few weeks later, I came home late at night, and my wife said, "You've been going nonstop since we've been here. You can't keep going like this." I said, "I know. I'll try harder." She said, "Well, can I ask at least how your day was?" I said, "I think I'm supposed to tell you that it was great, but I just held Joanne's hand while the Lord took her home to heaven." My wife cried. No one can know how much is behind these words. Only the Lord and the two of us knew our former life. Only the two of us knew the 8 years in between and all that happened in them. And the last thing I ever expected her to say was, "If it was all for Joanne, I'd do it again."